Most men can barely handle a woman. So this is going to be continuation on that video of most men cannot handle a woman. But now let's take it a step further. For the men that are actually competent with women, welcome back. Because y'all are next. Most men, most competent men, men that should be having beautiful women, cannot handle beautiful women. And you may be wondering to yourself, why is that the case? Maybe this is you. You get with a baddie. You get with the fine shit. You get with the 9 out of 10 woman. The woman of your dreams. But suddenly, all of a sudden, you forget who you are. All of a sudden, everything becomes a test. Oh, if I send this text message, how is she gonna see it? If I respond in this way, how is she gonna see it? If I come dressed this way, everything becomes a fucking test. You start to overthink everything. All of a sudden, you become a different man. You become a bitch, a shell of yourself, and you fucking hate yourself for it. And you see, you'll go on, you'll search up YouTube videos how to stop putting beauty on a pedestal, and you'll hear these dating coaches say, just don't put beauty on a pedestal, and you'll know that fucking advice does not work, because you'll still be wondering with how do I not put beauty on a pedestal? Well, you have to really realize, why are you putting beauty on a pedestal in the first place? And this is what I'm here to reveal to you. You, my friend, have attached your identity to being a man who's only valuable if he has a beautiful woman. Now you may say to yourself, I've never said this to myself consciously, but subconsciously, you may feel like, if you don't have a beautiful woman, that other men won't accept you in their social hierarchy. You may be afraid of your friends judging you for not having a beautiful woman, or judging you if you have a woman that doesn't look as good as whatever standard their standard is. You may feel guilty for even entertaining situations like that, because you're settling within. But why does it really matter if beauty to you is vain? Because I'm sure that's something you tell yourself. You might tell yourself, well, I know not to put beauty on a pedestal, but every single time I'm with the fine shit, with the baddie, I find myself fucking fumbling. It's because your value is dependent on how many fine women you have or do not have. So when you're actually with the woman that you want, you subconsciously believe that you don't deserve her. You don't feel worthy all of a sudden. You don't feel enough all of a sudden. And you may have everything on paper. You may have the money, the status, the power, but you still find yourself fumbling. You're competent, you're self-aware, you know what's happening, but you just don't know why it's happening. You may have grown up around environments, especially in America, especially in cultures that push degeneracy and hypersexuality, like Hispanic cultures. They're very huge on that, or tell you that you're not a real man unless you get multiple women. You're not a man unless you have a beautiful woman. Do you see how ridiculous that sounds? Now, when you're growing up though, our subconscious interprets that as truth. So now you're living with this limiting belief, and two parts of you are fighting within yourself when you're out with a beautiful woman. You're fighting within yourself saying, I actually have this idea that beauty is not, beauty's not on a pedestal. She's just a woman. Most of y'all will say, well, she has a vagina just like every other woman. You'll tell yourself shit like, well, she shits just like everybody else. But that shit does not work for you, because it's deeper than what meets the eye. And the advice that you get is so fucking horrible, because it doesn't actually address the root of the issue. And like I said, it goes back to your perception, how you see yourself when you're with a beautiful woman. And it's not what you think consciously, it's what's happening subconsciously. It's what happens somatically when your body begins to tense, when you start to feel like you're at threat, When you feel like you're in a threat, your body will tense up, your self-expression will collapse, you'll start to become more timid, you'll start to become more hesitant, you'll become the version of yourself that feels the safest. And the safest version of you is the exact version that repels her away. So you're stuck in the same cycle. You could get a baddie, but you can't sustain a baddie because you're a man who cannot handle a beautiful woman. And that's because you're too attached to the idea of a beautiful woman. The woman that you may be meeting, you may not even give a fuck about how they are. And that's already an issue at itself. You don't really vibe with their spirit. So now you're with these beautiful women and you're finding yourself unfulfilled, but at least you're not falling into the trap of actually staying with one that's toxic for you, which is another video for another day. But the root of the subject is, when you've been conditioned that beauty is the only value that a woman has, you're going to find yourself looking for only beauty, because you're going to subconsciously think to yourself, if I have a beautiful woman, I will be seen as better than other people. I will be seen as respected by my other peers. I will be seen as the man. You ever notice that? You may subconsciously look at a woman as a trophy. You know, a lot of men are addicted to the idea of having a trophy wife. But then they hate themselves later because they realize that don't mean shit. That the woman doesn't really love them for who they are. And that creates another identity crisis, where a man starts to compensate with what he has rather than who he is. And now he's dealing with women that are shitty. They're fine, but they're shitty. And it's all because you've subconsciously have allowed yourself to attach your worth to beauty. And this puts you in very peculiar situations. Like I said, where you're fucking yourself over, where you're abandoning yourself. And what sucks even more is that when you get these women, you may even find yourself not feeling as motivated. And you know why that is? Because your whole life has been built around getting women, specifically a beautiful woman. Because you may feel like yourself when you're with a woman who's a lower status in your eyes, a lower level of beauty in your eyes, but then the fine shit come around, all of a sudden you start to panic. You know, this is something that I had to rewire out of my nervous system, because I was that guy who would be like, well, shit, ass is like the pizza store. This is what would come out of my mouth. Ass is like the pizza shop. It's on every corner. But see, then I would actually walk in and approach these beautiful women, and I'd find myself panicking. And when I started pulling them, I would like collapse. My mind would collapse. I would shut down. And I would become a shell of myself. And for the longest time, I couldn't figure out why, until I realized that this man that we're talking about today was me. And when we grown up in a society that is so carnal, that has no spirituality, we're going to end up in situations like this. So to really rewire your nervous system and get over this hump, you have to put yourself in those situations and normalize the beauty of a woman. And really focus on who she is, how she's serving you, so you could live a life where a woman, the type of woman that you want, can actually come in and enter it. But when you still see women as a trophy, as something to conquer, as something that makes you feel like a man, you're going to keep performing as a man rather than being a man until you get that woman. And then when you do finally get her, you'll prove it to yourself, but then you'll slip back to who you used to be, just a former shell of yourself. And you'll know spiritually, something inside your spirit will tell you something is wrong here, but you'll refuse to follow that signal. And from then on, many men will lose themselves and become a servant to the beauty of a woman. You know, the scripture says the heart of a woman is like snares, like nets and snares. If you allow yourself, you'll get tangled up. If you allow yourself, you'll get snared up by the heart of a woman. Because contrary to belief, just because a woman is not physically strong doesn't necessarily mean she's not emotionally strong. And if you're a man who doesn't have awareness of these things, of these root wounds that you may be dealing with within, you will get caught up. You will get caught up. And the truth of the matter is, to show some compassion, we've all dealt with this in one way or another. Now, is it talked about? That's another story for another day. It's not really talked about, if we're being honest. A lot of men, especially lower level men, will laugh at you. What, bro? You wouldn't just smash the 9 and get it over with quick? Y'all do whatever the fuck you want to do. You know what I mean? To me, like I said, beautiful woman is like a commodity. You know what I mean? It's everywhere. You know what I mean? But for the men that want to step into a higher level of themselves and actually want to have a woman who's beautiful inside and out, this is the work that you have to do, the spiritual work within, and figure out why you cannot handle the beauty of a woman, because that's your first foot in the door. That's not even vetting her out yet. Most of y'all not even getting past the first and second fucking date because your nervous system is telling you, fuck you. You see? And you become this performative, this man who feels the need to perform. Why would you need to feel the need to perform against another human being? Unless their meaning is so high, the way you perceive them is so high, it causes you to shrink up so that you could keep them around. And you wanting to keep them around is exactly what pushes them away. Peace.